strategy consultant, Dikmo Oyewole. Dikmo, good morning. Good to have you join me.
Good morning, Mike.
Great. Now, I wonder what you make of the comparison. In fact, I know you've been following this development all the while, where the president tweeted about referencing the civil war and also the lines that the president used talking about how he wants to deal with troublemakers and using the lines that will give it to them in the language they understand and so on. You've seen the reaction of the Minister of Information. What do you make of all of that?
Well, for me, I find it quite humorous because since the deletion of the tweets, we've seen so much outrage from the presidency. And this is not a digression, but we didn't see that much outrage when over 150 children were abducted a few days ago. So I really don't know where their priorities lie. But back on the issue is that, so Twitter deleted a tweet from the president, which was actually an excerpt from a video. And from what we're hearing is that the video has also been deleted. So it goes against the guidelines of your community. What do you expect them to do? So I really don't know what the qualms is about. So I'll put it this way. Now, Twitter has deleted the tweet and the video because it goes against the guidelines of the community. The video, the original content where the tweet was from a video. We haven't seen the NBC maybe clamp down on any TV station that was present or that has aired it so far. That means that it hasn't gone against the guidelines of their charter. So I think that everybody should respect their own territory and just go about running their own business, which in this case of government, it is running the government of the country and saying that we're secure in this country.
All right, now, Twitter, this is not the first time Twitter is deleting tweets of a president. We saw under former President Donald Trump in the United States, Twitter did what he had to do, irrespective of the status of anyone. He's done that to some leaders in Europe as well. What makes this a little different? Are we learning or we're not learning from precedences? What do you make of that?
We're not learning, and I wouldn't say I'm surprised. It's not in our culture. It's not the culture of our government and government officials to learn from past mistakes. Either it's their personal mistakes or the mistake of others. So, I mean, I'm not surprised that we're getting this much reaction from them. But for me, the fact that this is a huge priority for them is what I still don't understand. Because for me, it doesn't threaten your position. Twitter deleting a tweet doesn't threaten your position, doesn't threaten your power. I don't know what kind of precedence you think it's setting, because the question is, have they looked inward to see what they're putting out there? Is it something that should be put out there because of the content and the outrage and the backlash? Because we've not had anyone in the presidency address that particular statement that was first aired in the video and then the excerpt was tweeted. Nobody has chosen to respond to Nigerians to say that, okay, you know what, we think that this is the explanation you deserve from this kind of video or from this kind of tweet. This is what the president is trying to say. You're not putting so much attention into that. But your priority is about a tweet being deleted, majoring on the minor and minoring on the major. For me, I have always sort of questioned where the sense of priority is, and I think this really just reinforces it. They should let this whole tweet thing go and go back to the issue of governance. People are dying every day. People are being kidnapped every day. People are being killed every day. They should go back to focus on that and leave this whole tweet matter alone. For me, it is getting quite embarrassing, and they should just move on with the business of government.
All right. Now, for the Minister of Information, or Minister in government, a spokesperson for the government, to even organize a press conference and bring this issue to the fore, tells us that it's a clear indication that it is a big deal to discuss and talk and reach out to Nigerians on social media by the president. Now, narrowing it down to the specifics of the fact that effective communication is very key here. And when a president speaks, it is the entire country that has spoken. Because the point is, when the president speaks, it's not the same thing as you and I speaking, except we become president at the time, as the case may be, when the time comes. But the point is, what do you make about how government communicates to Nigerians, that effective communication where everyone is put on board, everyone is put in the position to understand the mind of government as to pushing everyone towards that, or guiding everyone towards the direction that government wants people to go?
Thank you for that question, and I'll still going to circle back to that because it still points to what I started with. So far, we've seen that this particular government has no interest in communicating effectively, or the president communicating at all, with Nigerian citizens. But now a tweet has been deleted. You called a proper press conference. It wasn't just maybe you making a short video and then putting it on social media. You called a proper press conference to address it. Issues have been happening. We've been having issues around insecurity. The economy is all but busted. We've not had any serious press conference to that effect. So the question is, what's the sense of priority? Because for me, I still find it very confusing that this is something that they take this serious to call a proper press conference for, to see how to address. You're the same government that we've been complaining for the last 6 years that you do not communicate with us effectively. That is when you choose to communicate at all. And then even when you do communicate, where there's some form of ambiguity or confusion, people raise these issues on social media, on air, on the pages of newspapers. You do not call any press conference to address it because you do not rate us, because you do not think that we are important. But for us, or for them now, a tweet has been deleted and then they think that it reflects poorly on the presidency and on the president. So the question now is it at this stage or is it on this hill that they want to start with their perception management? Because if that's for me, I think it is quite late and it is quite misplaced. Because from the onset, we've always complained about perception management. They have no respect for perception management. They have no, I'm not sure if they have any understanding of it because of how they handle communication issues. There are several matters that have been raised in time past, in weeks, in months, and then they let them slide. And then when things degrade to the levels where people are complaining a lot, it trends on social media, that is when maybe somebody then puts out a tweet from the presidency, but also never the president, to say that, oh, okay, this is the issue, that is the issue, they gloss over it, and then we move on to the next thing that we're going to talk about. For me, it isn't good enough, and it doesn't show that they respect Nigerians as we should be respected. Either they like it or not. If you're in office today, either elected or appointed, you are there to serve Nigerians and you should give Nigerians the due respect. Part of that due respect is also learning to communicate and communicate effectively. That is part and parcel of what makes a democracy work. Communication, effective communication. That is why we do this every week. That is why we do this every day, to communicate effectively. It is part of what makes a democracy work. The communication should not be a one-way thing. It shouldn't be about the citizens always having to complain about something. It should also be the government looking for ways to adequately respond to those complaints or to those issues, whatever they may be, from the citizens or from the populace. But for me, that's not what we've seen from this particular government, and for me, it isn't a priority. So that is why a lot of us find it very offensive that they have chosen this hill of a deleted tweet to then say that, okay, you know what, we want to communicate, we want to call for a press conference, and this is our priority.
All right, now talking about the issue of management that you mentioned earlier on, everyone assumes, in fact, not an assumption, every president is supposed to have a team of those who are specialists, who are experts, who are professionals in information management for the government and for the president himself. And we certainly know that the president has that team. Now, if we are having this kind of hitches in ability to effectively communicate, what do you think, or what would you advise that that team should be looking at as a way of changing the narrative of how they engage Nigerians, and for Nigerians to understand when the president tweets, when the president speaks, when the president is reaching out, pouring out his mind to Nigerians?
Ideally, what I would expect any proper professional to do is to see how they can manage certain issues when they happen, or if the need arises, because that is literally what you're getting paid to do. Okay, it's not just about communicating something. Maybe the president says, okay, tell them that I want them to have public holiday on June 12th. And then you come out and say, okay, the president says he wants us to have public holiday on June 12th. No, that isn't how to run it. I expect that they have professionals right there and they should get their job done. They should do the job. That is what they're getting paid to do. They're getting paid from what we put in as taxes. They're getting paid from the Nigerian coffers, from the national coffers. So they should get their job done. But what we've seen is so far a lot of the folks that occupy that office or that have that mandate see Nigerians in a certain way that I think it is quite unfavorable. I think it's also quite, trying to look for a proper word to use now. Somehow we get addressed with some level of disdain, because even when you do engage them on social media, and especially on Twitter, the kind of responses you get from a lot of them, it tells you that they really, really don't think very highly of us as Nigerians. They don't have so much regard for us as a people, not understanding that they are there to serve us. Because I think that is part of the challenges we have, and it is what we're seeing cascade all over, either in elected office or appointed office. We have people in office today who are in positions of leadership, different positions of government, who don't have a clear sense of why they are there. They don't think they are there to serve. They think they are there to carry out somebody's mandate. And then if that person's mandate is somewhat questioned, not necessarily threatened, but if it is questioned, they see it as a personal affront, and they see it as part of their job to defend that person's mandate and not necessarily serving the people of Nigeria, which I think for me, there should be a particular mental shift on that particular issue from the people occupying this office, because they need to understand that you are there to serve the Nigerian people. And if you do not communicate effectively with the Nigerian people, the question is, what are you doing there? Should you still retain that job? Should you still retain that office? So understanding that you're there to serve the Nigerian people and not the mandate of a particular individual is something that these people need to understand. And I think that if they do understand it, we will see it, and it will reflect in how they pass across information, either directly from the president or from their own office in itself.
It's really quite interesting, the way you put it. For those who are professionals and who are hired or selected or brought into a team to work for either the chief executive at the presidential level or at the governorship level, as the case may be, for them, they are already professionals. But how about those who become the chief executives themselves, who may not necessarily have any idea or training when it comes to how to manage information and all of that? What kind of orientation should they go through by the time they become the chief executives after winning elections and all of that? Because the mindset of the chief executive also matters here, because sometimes when the professionals you hire as a team to work for you are there doing the best, sometimes the chief executive can also be spoiling from here while they're trying to repair. So it becomes a damage control situation at every point in time.
So I would approach it from two levels. One, it talks about the quality of leaders we have in office. One, we need to look at the quality of leaders we have, and two, we need to look at leaders that go in there with a sense of service. Now, if you go into a position of leadership with a sense of service, either in public or private sector, okay? If you find yourself in positions of leadership when you have a sense of service, you would have a sense of curiosity, you have a sense of responsibility, and that brings about listening to advice. Knowing where you're weak, knowing where you're strong, and knowing that you're supposed to surround yourself with people who are smarter than you are, people who know better than you do, and people who can advise you soundly. And then you can weigh that advice and adhere to it. Okay? So that talks about, so that's why I said it talks about two things. The competence, the quality of the leaders we have, the kind of leaders we have. So it's not about maybe after they win elections. Now this is also addressing before the elections. Who are the kind of people that we're having to run for office? Who are the kind of people who we find on the ballot? Because if we have people who do not have a sense of service, or who do not have a strong understanding of what leadership should be about, they will not change that mindset when they get into office. It's a mindset that should have been addressed before they get on the ballot, or before they even say that they want to run for office. So that is the challenge. That's a primary challenge that we have in this country. We see people who haven't been able to epitomize these factors that I've laid out before they get on the ballot, and then we expect a certain miracle to happen. No, we can only, like you said, expect some level of damage control. But you would also expect that on some level, that as a leader in whatever capacity, no matter your age, no matter your ranking, no matter your portfolio, before you got into that present office, you should have an understanding that when you're given advice, it is something you should consider strongly. And when an advice is coming to you more than once, it is something that you really need to take a closer look at. So for me, I'll go back to before the elections, before the ballot, the quality of leaders we have, the kind of leaders that we have or that we're going to have on the ballot to then have as options to be elected into office. So for me, I think that as Nigerians, that is something we should look at, and we should look at it very, very critically.
All right, that is really key. The disposition to be teachable. When you give advice, they should be able to listen. That's simplicity,
Exactly.
or being simplistic to accept advice. Thank you so much, Dikbo Oyewole, for being on the program this morning. Thank you.